I want to bring in our other attorney, Jeffrey Shapiro. Jeffrey, I want to get your take on this as well. We've been talking about not so much the validity that Michael Jackson drank propofol and that's what killed him, but it's teeing off, in a sense, on the defense's experts saying, this guy introduced that theory, and through my own study, we found out that's not even possible. So he's being impeached without even taking the stand.
You know, this whole case is something, I'm listening to this doctor's testimony, and I have to tell you something. I thought the most powerful part of his testimony was within the first couple of minutes when he said his job as an anesthesiologist is to put the patient to sleep and then to keep the patient alive. And if I were summing up in this case, that's exactly what I would be saying. I said, this guy completely failed. He put this man to sleep day after day after day, and he didn't keep him alive. And to me, that's what this case is all about. You can talk about all this other stuff, about all the other drugs, whether he ingested it, whether it was a drip or anything else. None of that matters. In my view, the only thing that matters is that this doctor overloaded him with drugs, used drugs that he didn't know how to use, and didn't keep his patient alive.
Well, to your point, Jeffrey, that's what the prosecutors want. A simple case, and a simple case where Conrad Murray was grossly negligent and led to Michael Jackson's death. Keith, what about that? Are the prosecutors keeping it that simple? Do you agree with Jeffrey here?
I think they have today. I think in the days past it's been a little convoluted and we didn't know whether they were coming or going with some of the witnesses. But with Dr. Schaefer, they've really brought it home today. And what Jeffrey is saying is exactly right. The phrase I wrote down from the testimony the other day was when Dr. Schaefer said, you have to understand that a patient in the next minute who is about to die looks just like a patient who is okay. That's critical, and that basically attacks the defense that you cannot and you must not multitask when you have somebody under anesthesia. Okay. That's very devastating stuff.
Hey, that is a sound clip number 4, and for you at home, as we listen to testimony, we began to stockpile for you, our viewers, different key elements, different highlights. So what Keith is talking about is highlight number 4 for us, where Stephen Schaefer is talking about multitasking, and you can't do that, i.e. you can't call your girlfriends while you're supposed to be monitoring every breath of your patient. So, Keith, here we go. Let's listen to that. We'll get both you and Jeffrey weighing in on this.
You can't multitask like this, even if you're a couple feet away, particularly because from a couple feet away, with no monitors in place and no alarms, a patient who is about to die does not look all that different from a patient who is okay, because nothing's happening. And you don't know that the oxygen saturation is dropping, and you don't know that breathing has stopped, because you're distracted while the patient is essentially dying.
And Jeffrey, those are the simple points you're talking about. You can even take it back to that video and that demonstration video of how propofol should be administered. The anesthesiologist is touching the patient, watching every breath. That's resonating with the jury, you got to think.
Yeah, you know, and not only that, but there was something else. I can't speak more highly of this guy's testimony. It's just extraordinary. But talking about pulse oximetry, and for non-medical people, they're monitoring whether or not the patient is breathing. The important thing about a pulse oximeter, as Dr. Schaefer said, it has to have an alarm. And with even in an operating room with millions of things going on, no doctor can be looking at everything all the time. But the fact of the matter is, a real working pulse oximeter in an operating room has an alarm, so that if the patient's breathing declines or stops, the doctors, everybody in that operating room will be aware of it.
You know, Jeffrey,
if that had existed here,
right,
this doctor, assuming he was acting as a doctor, could have responded.
I know, and a pulse oximeter that you're talking about that would have an alarm and would be properly used, I mean, we can never say it would be properly used in a home setting, but would actually sound an alarm if Michael Jackson stopped breathing, would have cost Dr. Murray $40 a month. He's making $150 grand a month, but he can't spring $40 a month.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable when you think of those simple points like that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Here's a patient that can afford $150,000 a month for a doctor. Michael Jackson could have afforded to have a branch of the Rusk Institute in his bedroom. There was no cost was not an issue. What was at issue here was a doctor who wanted to operate under the radar, who, as Dr. Schaefer said, was acting as an employee, not as a doctor. So he didn't want to have the proper equipment. Probably he didn't even know how to use the proper equipment.
Right. He was in over his head. He was in over his head. Michael
I
Jackson
wonder whether or
died.
not Dr. Murray, I don't even think he understood what he was dealing with. I do not believe that Dr. Murray, unless he was trying to commit intentional murder, had any idea of this cocktail of drugs that he was administering to Michael Jackson. I don't think he knew what he was doing in that bedroom.
The experts have basically laid that out there. Keith, real quick, weigh in, and we got to take a break.
One of our viewers through Facebook said that we're learning about propofol alongside Dr. Murray, who's learning it for the first time, and I think that's what Jeff's point is.
I've seen a few. Yeah, I've seen a few of those as well. That through this, and one even said, I believe it was on Facebook, we know more about propofol now than Murray did when he was treating Michael Jackson. A lot of those kind of jabs coming out there. Hey, let's take a quick break.